Pausa rapidinho agora para falar de dica de ouro para os papais e mamães. Depois de experimentar a nova Hug Supreme Care Fralda Roupinha, tudo ficou ainda melhor pro meu filho. É a única com canais em X que se adaptam aos movimentos, com 2 vezes proteção noturna e cintura elástica que se adapta ao corpinho do bebê, além de ser super fácil de colocar e tirar. Praticidade pura. Então guarda essa dica. Nova Hug Supreme Care Fralda Roupinha. Bebê, estamos juntos nessa, mais do que nunca. Agora curta seu podcast.
Welcome back to Looking at Lucasfilm, the podcast with a different perspective on the world of Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and all of the other entities that George Lucas, Kathleen Kennedy, Dave Filoni, and Jon Favreau, as well as the rest of the team at Lucasfilm, have dreamed up over the past 4 decades. I'm entertainment writer Jim Hill, and my co-host, Brian Gaughan, and I are recording this week's show on Monday, July 22nd, 2024. We're doing things a little differently this time around, folks, and that's because, Brian, tomorrow at 8 a.m., right? You are heading down to San Diego.
Yes.
You and Bill Stout are going to be setting up at this year's Comic-Con, which is being held in and around the San Diego Convention Center, which you'd think 2.6 million square feet between the waterfront and the Gaslight District. That would be enough, right? Enough space to hold 150,000 people who will all of them be headed that way starting on, is it Thursday night? When would they do the previews or Wednesday
Well, the
night?
preview is Wednesday. But
Okay.
The reason I'm going down there, Bill and I go down there Tuesday because we used to go down on Wednesday, set up the booth, and then there was Wednesday night. But then we'd be exhausted. We wouldn't get anything to eat, and it was really crazy. So now, because we're getting up there in age, we go down there at Tuesday.
That is the voice of experience. And when I say truly the voice of experience, because Bill Stout, famed artist Bill Stout, is one of only 5 people on the planet who has been to every single Comic-Con since 1970, right? And
it was weird how he got on it. At that time, he was doing portraits at Disneyland in the New Orleans Square. Not the caricatures, but actual oil paintings. Wow. And as he was doing them, he hears a voice behind him saying, "Are you the Bill Stout that did the cover to COVID-19 or something like that?" And he turns around and he goes, "My name is Scott Shaw, and we're going to put together a comic, a comic get-together in San Diego. Would you like to be a guest?" So Bill was was possibly the first guest, including Jack Kirby. I think 77 might have been my first time. I was 17. I knew about it, but I never got down there because I would buy comics from a guy called Richard Alf, and he was one of the founders of Comic-Con. And I remember the first time, back when I first went, you could go down there on Saturday. You can wait in a line, not a long line, maybe half an hour. Buy your ticket, go in there, and then you drive back home. Because there wasn't a lot of things they had there. They had, for the movie panels, they had a guy with a slideshow. For and the big draw was Harlan Ellison and his speech as he insulted everybody in the auditorium. And then the comics. That's all there was on the floor was comics and some people selling artwork. Bill was there. He sold his Mickey at 60.
Yep. One of his many sketchbooks. In fact, I'm looking at my pile right now. Well, again, that was then, and this is now. And speaking of Mr. Stout, if you're looking to collect some of his sketchbooks yourself, you can find him in booth number 4803, that's down aisle 48, which, as Brian explained to me earlier, is between lobby doors F and G on the main show floor of the San Diego Convention Center. And by the way,
we can hear everything in Hall H when we're sitting there too. The explosions.
Oh, that's so cool.
As they kill the people in Hall H.
All right. Now, also, while we're plugging here, I want to remind folks that my co-host on Fine Tuning, Drew Taylor, is actually going to be emceeing a panel this year. He's going to be doing the Jurassic World Chaos Theory panel. That's going to be on Sunday, July 28th, starting at 3 p.m. in rooms 6DE. So if you're still there and you haven't, like Brian, wandered off to someplace to lie down, go check that out. But anyway, again, given that Brian has to hit the road tomorrow at 8, we're doing stuff a little differently this time around. We recorded the feature for this week's edition of Looking at Lucasfilm last Wednesday, I want to say, right after the last episode of Star Wars The Acolyte became available for viewing on Disney Plus, and you can hear that piece on the second half of today's show. But first comes the news, and as always, news portion of Looking at Lucasfilm is brought to you by touringplans.com. If you are headed down to Central Florida anytime soon to sample some of the theme parks that you'll find around the city beautiful, well, Touring Plans can help you save time. More importantly, can help you save money as you wander around Disney World or the Universal Orlando Resort. So please check them out at touringplans.com. And given that Brian and I were just talking about Comic-Con, I guess it's appropriate that we start off this week's news segment by talking about Marvel Comics' current era of Star Wars comics, which for the past 5 years has mined that span of time that fell between Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, and Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. Well, all of that comes to an end this September, which is when Marvel Comics releases Star Wars issue number 50 and its companion volume, Star Wars Darth Vader issue number 50. And by the way, Brian, both of these will be oversized. We're talking 50-page epics that look wrap this particular run of comics at Marvel with a bang. And then later on this year, Marvel promises to take its readers to a whole new era of Star Wars, and details will be released. Well, hang on. Details were released today. Look at that. Hey, okay. As I was pulling together the research for today's show, Brian, news broke about what Marvel Comics will be revealing at this year's Star Wars Stories of a Galaxy Far, Far Away panel, which will be held Thursday, July 25th, starting at 4:15 p.m. in Ballroom 20 at San Diego Comic-Con. And as they explain, this is coming on the heels of Star Wars issue number 50 and Star Wars Darth Vader issue number 50. And Marvel Comics is bringing us the Battle of Jakku, Insurgency Rising, which is a new maxi series, which I guess that not a miniseries, that jumps ahead in time to events. To after the events we saw in Return of the Jedi, and reveals what happens with the Rebel Alliance after everything went down on the moon of Endor. And this is the catchphrase for this new line of Marvel-produced Star Wars comics. The final battle of the Galactic Civil War begins with the first issue of this maxi series, which will hit store shelves on October 2nd of this year, 2024. So I kind of like that, Brian. We ask a question and we answer that question. All in the same thing.
It comes back right at us.
It comes back at us. Okay. Now, if you are a Disney theme park fan and are headed to Comic-Con, want to suggest that on Friday morning, July 26th, which, by the way, unofficially is Star Wars Day at San Diego Comic-Con, you need to check out the Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, unveiling the secrets, lore, and more within Black Spire Outpost panel, which is being held in room 7AB from 10 a.m. to 11. And I'm not just saying that, because all panel attendees will then receive an exclusive Black Spire Outpost souvenir. Now, again, forgive me, Brian and I together, I mean, I haven't gone to nearly as many San Diego Comic-Cons as Brian and Bill have.
No, I've been going since, like I said, 1977. So I've been going almost 50 years.
Well,
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. Well, no. By the way, I'm going to circle back on a story you just shared in a moment. But first, okay. Now, and again, forgive me, we are two old men talking about how to properly do San Diego Comic-Con. And all right, first and foremost, I know, that's the Galaxy's Edge panel, kind of early on Friday. It starts at 10 a.m. And also have to, just putting the word out, the capacity of the room this panel is being presented in, room 7AB, only 480 people. Now, mind you, we were talking about the presentation in Ballroom 20 just a moment ago. That has 4,800, room for 4,800 people. So it's one of those things where it's like, okay, presentation of Ballroom 20, very good chance you're going to get in. Presentation in Room 7AB, might be a little trickier. If you really want to get to this Galaxy's Edge panel, you might want to head over to the convention center early on Friday. And more to the point, you might want to sit there for a while, because as soon as the Galaxy's Edge panel is open, in the very same room, 7AB, starting at 11, is Brian Mertens' high-end Star Wars collectibles panel. And then, starting at 12 noon, is Craig Miller. Now, Craig Miller is the gentleman that Brian just mentioned, the guy who showed up with a slideshow of the sci-fi film that he was trying to promote. And
he's one of the unsung heroes of Star Wars.
He is.
If it wasn't for him, I don't think Star Wars would have been as big. And the reason why was he really went out to, or he convinced 20th Century and George to go out to the science fiction and fantasy attendees to, they went to Worldcon and they went to a Comic-Con. And because of this, the first 3 days, there were lines, especially in Los Angeles. And when there's a kind of slow news day and it's in your backyard, you throw out a crew there, and the crew was like, because they've never seen a line since Jaws in the theater in front of the Chinese. So they were out there, and then people, including my parents, because I went to see it on Thursday, nobody wanted to go with me. But by Friday, by Saturday, the weekend was Memorial Day weekend, everybody wanted to go because they saw the lines, and they're going, well, if they're in lines, it must be something good. People like to go into a line. Do you know that? They see a line. They like to get in there. Why are you in the line? I don't know, but I know there's something good at the end of this line.
Yeah, well, again, Craig, just to sort of give you a little background here, Mr. Miller was the original director of fan relations for Lucasfilm, and the book is Star Wars Memories. In fact, that is the name of the panel. But just to review here again, Friday morning, room 7AB. From 10 a.m. to 1 in the afternoon, 3 solid hours of Star Wars goodness. And I got to say, Brian, I missed this aspect of going to San Diego Comic-Con. How you used to look at the schedule and look at what was in what room and decide, okay, do I need to camp out?
Yeah.
And for those of you who don't understand the term camp out literally meant you looked, like say you saw at 2:00 in the afternoon, there was a panel you really, really, really wanted to see. There was somebody who was, you came down to San Diego deliberately to hear their stories, or a film panel, that sort of thing. But to guarantee that you got a seat, you'd sometimes get in line, or have to get in line, for the panel that was like 2 and 3 hours beforehand, and get in and grab a seat. So you would be in the hall. You just stay for every panel before the panel you really wanted to see. And it just, I mean, you can't go to Comic-Con with a checker's mind. You gotta you gotta come down to San Diego thinking that you're a grandmaster at chess, and and plan a couple of moves ahead. And that said, though, boy, what a tough Comic-Con this is going to be for Marvel fans. I mean, think about it.
I know.
Thursday night is when the very first preview screenings of Deadpool and Wolverine are going to happen. And this is, look, there's no other way around it. This is the Marvel movie we've been waiting for 4 years. More to the point, given kind of the missteps on the MCU side of things, this is the reboot, the relaunch, sort of the palate cleanser. It's already being described. It's based on ticket sale trends and that sort of thing. It looks like it's already going to be the biggest hit of the summer, which, given the box office numbers for Inside Out 2, which currently stands at $1.144 billion, that's saying a lot, about what that movie, Wolverine and Deadpool and Wolverine will supposedly pull in by the end of the summer. And which explains, by the way, why Kathleen Kennedy and Dave Filoni now really, really, really want to work with Shawn Levy on a Star Wars movie. And what's been interesting is Levy also really wants to do a Star Wars movie with these guys. In fact, at the UK premiere of Deadpool and Wolverine just a day or so ago, Shawn was interviewed by On Demand Entertainment and got asked about this project. And he said, I quote, Jonathan Troper is writing my Star Wars film. We did the Adam Project together, and we have an idea that is really exciting to us and exciting to Lucasfilm President Kathleen Kennedy and Chief Creative Officer Dave Filoni. Now, Shawn's been around the block a couple of times, and he flat out says, look, no one ever knows if development is going to reach the starting gate, but with this movie, I'm hoping it will. And and he goes on to say, I definitely can't share anything. I've been so well trained by the Stranger Things people and the folks at Marvel that my lips are sealed, so don't ask. But that said, Brian, perhaps we'll get some information about this project in just, 2 weeks' time at the studio showcase at this year's D23 Expo, which is happening on Friday, August 9th. And we're both going to be there for that one too, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. And maybe at the same presentation, we'll get some Star Wars Skeleton Crew news, because we're still waiting on a release date for this thing, right?
I've been wondering. It was done at the end of December 80 or 83. Mm-hmm. See where I'm going? 2023, and a lot of people thought, oh, we'll get it then, and then it goes, well, something else. But then they kept on throwing other things at us.
Yeah.
And so I don't know why it's been delayed as long as it has been, and we're not getting anything. But now it's supposed to be in the fourth quarter of 2024. So
they say.
Yeah.
That somewhere in the mix between Thanksgiving and Christmas of this year, the new limited series from the Star Wars limited series from Lucasfilm. And now, mind you, just last week we had the latest limited series from Lucasfilm, Star Wars: The Acolyte wrap. And Brian and I will share our thoughts on that in a moment. But first, this.
Pausa rapidinho agora para falar de dica de ouro para os papais e mamães. Depois de experimentar a nova Hug Supreme Care Fralda Roupinha, tudo ficou ainda melhor pro meu filho. É a única com canais em X que se adaptam aos movimentos, com 2 vezes proteção noturna e cintura elástica que se adapta ao corpinho do bebê, além de ser super fácil de colocar e tirar. Praticidade pura. Então guarda essa dica. Nova Hug Supreme Care Fralda Roupinha. Bebê, estamos juntos nessa, mais do que nunca. Agora curta seu podcast.
And we're back. Now, to The Acolyte. Brian and I are doing something different this time around. And that's largely because, Brian and I consumed The Acolyte, the new Star Wars limited series for Disney Plus, differently. And Brian, you watched it from its debut on June 4th. That in fact, Disney Plus put 2 episodes out at that time.
Right, and it came on at 6 o'clock our time, so it would have been 9 o'clock your time.
Okay, and then for the next 6 weeks. There was a brand new episode every week, ending on July 16th. Mm-hmm. And I apologize, folks. It was a kind of a busy time. My mom had some health issues, so I kept sort of putting off doing the Acolyte, and ended up literally the day the finale dropped. It's like I haven't watched a single one of these, and I thought. But, I've always heard about people who binge a show, who will literally sit down and, watch it. And
I've done that.
I've never done it.
You've never done it even for like a 4-episode show or something?
I gotta tell you. I mean,
wow.
I grew, well, like you, I grew up with terrestrial television, the tune in next week. I'm still the guy who's that we have to tape the show. It's like, nobody's doing, it's a DVR. Get with the program, Grandpa. So anyway, I wound up watching Star Wars The Acolyte all in one fell swoop. All 8 episodes in one, I want to say 6-hour long pile. I think I stopped in the middle to make Nancy her dinner, but beyond that, watched the whole thing. And I mean, I think like a lot of you, I was intrigued by The Acolyte just from the outside. I mean, face it, created by Leslye Headland, the woman behind the hit Netflix series, The Russian Doll. And that's the other thing. This came in television production speed. This came along relatively quickly. I mean, Russian Doll dropped on Netflix back in February of 2019, got renewed that same year, and it was at the end of 2019 that we first began hearing that the people at Lucasfilm were interested in working with Leslye to do something Star Wars related. And and then 2020 rolls around. We hear that spring or thereabouts, she's developing something. We get the name of the show, The Acolyte, in December that same year. And we then start to learn that first television product or television production set in the High Republic era of the Star Wars saga. And I think a lot of people got very, very excited because they had seen Russian Doll, and it was a comedy drama, and it was like, ooh, this is going to be interesting.
Very female centric.
Yep.
And like when you say excited, there were a lot of people who were very excited.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
The opposite way. And they really thought that this was going to change the whole, what Star Wars was and what Star Wars has always been, and then it wasn't our Star Wars and things like that. And they basically were wrong.
Yeah, though that said, I mean, face it, from the first episode where, for lack of a better term, we got psychoed.
Right.
Think about it. You have Carrie Ann Moss that we all know from The Matrix. So here is this big star from a genre film, and not to spoil it for folks, but she plays Jedi Master Endara, who is killed off in the first 10 minutes of the show by some young woman who clearly is Force trained, who Endara recognizes of sorts, and then we are in the middle of. Would you say this is Star Wars' first murder mystery?
Well, yeah, because there hasn't really been. I mean, there have been deaths in the Star Wars canon, but nobody ever went to find out who did it. A hand did shoot first, so. But no, this was the first time that they focus on a person who. What were they? I mean, okay, Darth Vader, you didn't find him out until the end of the second movie. But with this, there were people doing things and you didn't know why. And it was kind of weird because you saw this one, like you said, you saw this one woman come and kill Carrie Ann Moss. But then you see the same woman doing something totally different.
Yep. I mean, she's out in deep space. She's some sort of a tech that can go outside of the ship.
Right.
And again, for me, that was kind of what was intriguing about it, laying down the mystery, and then we're suddenly on Coruscant, home of the Jedi Temple. Of course, it's a Coruscant much earlier in its history. In fact,
Right.
Brian and I were joking. It's like, wow, much lighter traffic.
Yeah, there's no traffic.
Yeah, the commute Coruscant would have been easy back then, and shorter buildings.
Yeah, it was really strange when you were watching it.
Mm-hmm.
They had to tell you it was Coruscant. The only reason you knew it was because the Jedi building's still the same. But it was really cool because then you realize, oh my gosh, this is 100 years before.
Yeah.
Because you could have been watching it, it could have been any time, but now when you saw Coruscant, now you knew that you were back in time.
Yeah. But sadly, the upper management at the Jedi Temple seems to be the same. We got our official Venestra who learns of this incident, and her first instinct is, all right, we need to get our arms around this. We need to get under control. She taps Yord, a Jedi Knight who had trained with this young woman, Osha. And let Osha's dispatch her, bring her back. We need to investigate this. And so Yord collects, Osha arranges for prison transport for her back to Coruscant. Though that, through various devices, that transport gets taken over by prisoners. Osha winds up crash landing on a planet, but she survives the crash. And then when she's there, this story takes another interesting bend because she has a vision that her twin sister, who supposedly died in a fire, is actually alive. And more to the point, she seems to be the one who killed Carrie-Anne Moss's character. And now back at the Jedi Temple, word of the crash and the escaped prisoners and all that is getting out. And this Jedi Temple official, Venestra, wants to, again, now get this under control. So she turns to Master Soul, Jedi Master Soul, who, as it turns out, Osha was his Padawan, before she, actually left the temple without completing her training. And Venestra asks Soul to investigate, and Soul decides to head out with his new apprentice, Jakey. But right from the get-go, you get the sense that Soul is emotionally invested, right?
Yeah, he's with Osha, but still, he seems confused why this person would go after first Carrie-Anne Moss and then the guy at the temple. And it was like, and even that guy, he goes, I know why you're here, and da-da-da. And then I'm thinking, well, why doesn't Soul know? Why doesn't he realize, because this is trauma for him, that and it's probably the reason why he couldn't teach Osha. And it just seems, by the way, Lee Jung-jae, now I don't know if this is true, but I heard that he did his dialogue all phonetically.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because he can't really speak English, but if he did, oh my God, what an actor.
Yeah, it was a wonderful performance. But
because the inflection, it did not seem like a guy who was struggling with English. It seemed like somebody who really knew what English was. And I mean, all the acting. I mean, we'll talk about Mandy, what is it, Jacinto from The Good Place. He was amazing. Oh, Daphne Keane. We didn't see a lot of her, but she was great.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, what was interesting is in the first episode, they sort of laid down the concept that nothing is ever quite what it seems.
Right, it seems, exactly.
In the Acolyte. For example, Soul goes to Karlak, the planet that Osha has crash landed on. Yord has come along for the ride, and Osha tells Soul that it's her sister May that killed Carrie-Anne Moss's character, and Soul immediately believes her. And that's the thing. It's like, okay, why do you immediately believe her? And and more to the point, what's the connection here? And And now we have another 7 episodes where we sometimes we will see the same story or the same incident from
from a different
point of view, back up the story a bit. In fact, a lot of this story ties back to the planet of Brendock, which is home to an all-female coven of witches led by Mother Anastasia.
Now, do we ever find out whether they're connected to the Night Sisters?
Well, again, this is the thing about something that's set in the High Republic, and more to the point, not to spoil too much of this limited series, but we eventually learn that we're sort of watching the dawn of the Sith, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. But they don't call it the Sith, do they? They just call it the dark side?
Well, they were kind of vague about. I mean, what was interesting is Quamir, the our hiding in plain sight Sith master. What was interesting to me is that you remember how the Witches' Coven, when they were doing chants and that sort of thing, would talk of the power of one, the power of two, the power of all.
Two, right.
And what was interesting is that Quamir, when he voiced what he wanted to experience the power of two. He wanted the equivalent of a Sith Padawan. And that, I mean, the other part of the show that, again, I thought was fascinating, that eventually you realize that when the veil is ultimately lifted, this is all about an incident that had happened 16 years previously. Mm-hmm. In fact, what was fascinating is the Jedi had been drawn to the same planet that this Witches' Coven was on. And initially, the Jedi had no idea the Witches' Coven was even there, but they were there for weeks investigating what they called avergence, or they were looking for proof of avergence, with the notion of that this is something that was very important in the Force and could create life. And
did they say that? Did they say? Oh, yeah, they did, yep. Didn't they?
And
okay, I gotta. Okay,
well,
go on.
No, I mean, and the thing of, I guess, what was so interesting about what Leslye Headland did with this story is, more often than not, these events turned on young people making quick bad decisions, whether it was May starting a fire at the temple, or for that matter, the Master Endir's Padawan, the Torben, who they've been on that planet for weeks looking for the virgins and hadn't found anything. And this kid was just tired of the assignment and wanted to go back to Coruscant. And that was his weakness. He wanted to go home. And that, in the end, to bring us back to the kind of the premise of today's show. Again, Brian, you watch this serially, every week. A new episode came on, and I when we were pre-gaming, you were mentioning to the fact that, especially the episodes that would double back in on themselves, and you'd see the same scenes from a different angle. You found those kind of frustrating, right?
Well, yeah, because, I don't believe that the Acolyte was basically projected correctly. Mm-hmm. It wasn't shown correctly. Mm-hmm. I think the Acolyte would have been great in a movie theater, but of course it's not, a big Star Wars film, so maybe it wouldn't have done. I think it would have. But they made a big mistake. Two things.
Okay.
Showing it in chapters and making the chapters so short, especially what was it, episode 3, where all of a sudden it's Lord of the Rings and they're doing they're walking single file and all this stuff, and it just got confusing because sometimes I don't remember exactly what happened a week before. Thank goodness I have Devin, but then he gets upset at me. Shh, Daddy, be quiet. But I don't know who this person is. Or what's the motivation? I mean, do you really know what the motivation is of Quilmar?
He was definitely kind of a blank slate. In fact, that they definitely kind of leaned into that. The fact that he was kind of unknowable.
Right, but did somebody push him into it? I mean, he seems like he was on a mission of his own. But then you saw the guy in the cave.
You did. It did.
And that person in the cave very much could be Darth Plagueis.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And wasn't Darth Plagueis in canon? Isn't he the one that basically discovered the dark side to where he could control it? And the Sith came out of that?
You're not wrong. But here's the thing. I think that now, from my side of the fence, watching all of the 8 episodes in one
together,
yeah, and so a lot of the narrative subtleties and that sort of thing, because they were happening right on top of one another, played much better. But I'm not going to lie, folks. This was one of the darkest Star Wars things.
Right, there was not any humor in it whatsoever.
Yeah,
and by you binging it too. Mm-hmm. Did you discover who the stranger was before I did? Because I discovered it right when all of a sudden, I think it was the end of chapter 4 or 3, where you saw him come out of the and I'm going, wait a minute, and I'm thinking we've got to have seen him before, and that's when I discovered it. But that's because I forgot how important of a character he was in the past. But you watching it right away, you discovered it earlier, right?
Well, I mean, look, there was the scene where they went to the Wookiee planet, where they were trying to chase down the Wookiee Jedi Master.
Right.
And Quirmir and May are traveling together. And at this point, Quirmir is still pretending to be the smuggler.
Right.
The lesser partner of May's. And at one point, he steps away and says, I'm going to go get it. We're almost out of water. I'm going to go get some fresh water. And again, they've underlined, circled, and indented that this is a scary planet full of things that can kill you.
Danger, yeah.
And he's like, I'm going to get us some water. And it's like, oh, wait a minute.
Okay.
As a writer, it was one of these things, well, hang on. That suddenly seems kind of out of character. And that's the thing. I suddenly it was like, okay, there is a lot more to this guy than there appears to be. And so when it was revealed that he's the helmeted Jedi Master, it's like, okay, all right. I mean, that's the thing. I think in the end, I appreciated the craft. I mean,
yeah.
Look, it was beautifully shot. The fight scenes were amazing.
Some of the best. Yeah. And because they didn't rely on the lightsaber, which is, if you think about it, I mean, the lightsabers can't come in later it didn't look like the Jedi used the lightsaber as a weapon as much as they used it as a defense. And it just seemed, I mean, the fighting was, especially the first fight with May and Indira, it just blew my mind. I mean, she could do the Matrix stuff, and now they put it in there. That was a good choice to have her like introduce this fighting skill.
Yeah, but again, where this ended.
It was not.
Well, yeah. That's the other thing. I think the inference was the story obviously continues. I mean, just the end shot of Venestra, who's now attempting to sweep everything under the rug because there's an inquiry from the Senate in regard to what's going on at the Jedi Temple. And so who does she turn to? I mean, they don't flat out say it, but we see a certain small Jedi Master with very big ears from behind. That's the thing. In fact, what's been especially interesting in the past week or so, Leslye Headland has made no bones about it. She's been out on social media to the effect of saying, look, if you want a second season of this, talk this show up. And I gotta tell you, as much as I enjoyed this, I don't know as I'm up for another 8 episodes of The Acolyte.
I agree. It shouldn't be 8 episodes, but again, maybe they should take a book or a page out of the Netflix Rebel Moon book and show it as a feature, 2.5 hours. And if they have more than that, then just do part 2.
All right,
with a 4-month intermission.
Yeah, that might be a smarter way to go. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I am so looking forward to season 2 of Andor. I mean, which was dark as well, but
okay, it was dark, but he is such a bright character that you weren't torn into the darkness and stayed there. He, especially the second arc when he was in prison, it was just so, I know that's dark, but it was enjoyable to see that the acting and the story that went on and the tension. It was a different movie than the first one. And then of course the third one was just wrapping it up until going into the next. I hope they do the same thing. But again, they should show them all at the same time, all arcs at the same time.
I don't know.
Because they did show the first arc. And then you have a funny robot, but I mean you had some kind of humor and some kind of lightness. That was what Star Wars is. This, like you say, this is dark.
Yeah.
It's never been done as dark before. And I don't know if that should be Star Wars, though.
Well, and the other thing, and I genuinely feel bad about this aspect, because face it, they have put so much time, so much effort into the High Republic, publishing and all that. And this was the first TV production set in the world of the High Republic.
But this is the end of the High Republic.
Yeah.
We need to know the beginning.
Yeah.
And if this is the beginning of the Sith, okay, I'll accept that. That's why you're showing it to me. The end of the High Republic is when the Sith rise. Okay, there we go. But give us a prequel. And I heard that we're going to get an animated prequel, maybe. Give us a prequel and then give us a sequel.
Yeah.
And then lead us into Obi-Wan or Anakin.
Well, speaking of animated High Republic stuff, there is, of course, the Young Jedi Adventure show. But again, that's aimed at the preschool audience. And I'm not going to lie here, Brian. I think that using this as our gateway into live action High Republic may have hindered that effort.
Yeah.
I realize it's 200 years before the Star Wars saga or something to that effect. And it was close enough in look and style that, yeah, I mean, there was some visual continuity.
Yeah, but it didn't really explain.
No. I mean, it's just, you have to want to go down those sorts of rabbit holes. But that's the thing with the original New Hope. You wanted to know more about Darth Vader. You wanted to know more about Luke. And then when you got Empire and I Am Your Father, you wanted to know about that. And I have to say that I came away from Star Wars The Acolyte with just the sense of, I'm good. I mean, I don't necessarily feel the need right now to return to this world. It wasn't when the camera irised out at the end of A New Hope, it's like, that was fun, and I'd love to return to this world. Right. And at the end of the Acolyte, when we watched Osha and Quimmer holding hands on the causeway, looking out at the ocean,
I know that was.
Okay, so. But I will say this much, that my reaction to this was, well, okay, at least I got Jude Law and Star Wars Skeleton Crew.
To look forward to. Yeah.
Because that looks light. That looks fun. That looks like, okay.
Well, they keep on giving us the it's like the Goonies, or it's like Stand By Me, and then maybe It. That's what the Star Wars universe needs. It needs something like that. But they're saying it's a standalone, it's a limited series, and it doesn't go anywhere. But I also heard that a lot of the characters, or some of the characters in Skeleton Crew, will be in The Mandalorian
and Grogu, the feature film,
right? And Ahsoka too, maybe. So I mean, this is. And again, they're giving us that kind of Star Wars. We're getting this kind of Star Wars. Maybe it was they wanted to feel the temperature. I mean, a lot of people. It's hard to walk away with this thing feeling entertained, and not just like you were kicked in the stomach.
I don't know if I came away from watching all 8 episodes in one pile, kicked in the stomach. It was a lot. It was heavy. It was dark, but at the same time, I have enough respect for Leslye Headland and would love to see her get another chance. So if your mileage varied in regard to the Acolyte and you'd like to see a season 2, all by all means, folks, get on social media and let the folks at Lucasfilm and Disney know that you'll want another one of these, because we all saw what happened with Willow, the series.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
God,
I mean, not only did we only get one season, you now can't even watch the first season. So I guess that's the other thing. Be careful what you wish for here. This is too dark, and I don't want to see that again. And they could pull a Willow on us, folks. And that, my friends, is Mr. Gaughan and myself discussing the Acolyte.
That was exhausting.
All right, exhausting,
and I didn't have to go. I
mean,
didn't have to go through what you did. I mean, you binged it. I had to watch it every week because my son would have killed me if I didn't in my sleep. So yeah.
Well, again, hopefully, us discussing the exhausting show is enjoyable. All right.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Now, Brian does in fact need to go pack. So we had best close here, folks. So now, where can the nice folks find you, Brian? And I don't mean at Comic-Con, which, by the way, reminder, booth number 4803. And again, he'll be there with talented artist William Stout. Buy some sketchbooks, folks. But social media wise, where can they find you, Brian?
At BT Gaughan or Instagram, BT Gaughan. Yeah, that's it. BTGAUGHAN. And I'll be going around looking for cool Star Wars costumes and taking pictures and just all that fun stuff that is there. Especially there's a couple Star Wars booths that always show like the new action figures and stuff that. So I'll be doing that.
Cool stuff. All right. No, wish I could be there, but somebody's got to stay home and make the podcast. And speaking of which, here at the Jim Hill Media Podcast, we have a slew of podcasts we would like you to sample. We have, of course, Disney Dish that I do with Len Testa. Likewise, we have Fine Tuning, which I do with Drew Taylor. And again, remember, folks, he's also doing the Jurassic World Chaos Theory panel on Sunday, starting at 4:15, in room 6DE, I want to say. Anyway, and that's under the auspices of the very nice folks at DreamWorks Animation. We also have the Epic Universal podcast that I do with Eric Hersey, who also edits and produces a lot of the shows here at Jim Hill Media. Likewise, I do, well, again, San Diego Comic-Con is all about merch. And someday I'll have to drag Lauren Hersey out there because
that would be cool.
Yeah, she and I do the I Want That Too podcast, which again is about all sorts of merch. And let's see, also want to remind you that we also now host Manufacturing the Magic, which is a wonderful look at the history of themed entertainment done by Shelley and Noah Valladolid. And cannot forget to mention the new video series that we're doing for Patreon, myself, Len Testa, and veteran Imagineer Jim Schul, and that is Disney Unpacked. And this month we are talking about when Paradise Pier got transformed into Pixar Pier. Let's see. Beyond that, folks, if you could do Brian and I a favor, if you could head over to Apple Podcasts and rate and review the show you're listening to right now, Looking at Lucasfilm. Social media-wise, you can find me on Twitter, X, whatever you call it, and Instagram is Jim Hill Media, and over on Facebook, it's Jim Hill Media News. And that's going to do it. So, again, we're going to free up Brian, go pack the car, have a great time in San Diego.
Oh, I will.
Do sleepover and come back tan, rested, and ready next Monday. And
Are we going to be able to do a show before D23, though?
That seems to be the plan. But
okay, good.
Let's get you home from San Diego first. And all right, folks, that's going to do it
for now. I like it that you care so much.
Yeah, I do. What can I do? All right. Anyway, thanks for listening, folks. We'll be back soon.